Yo, so y'all know the drill at this point. Let's see who we can piss off today by simply talking about the most well-respected tier list in the Zenless Zone community, at least on the EN side of things, right? We're here again at pridewind.gg taking a look at the Shiyu Defense tier list for Zenless Zone Zero, patch 1.1 part 2, and we're here for a number of different reasons, right? Qingyi literally just came out in the game, and she is a powerhouse for a number of reasons. We'll get into that in just a second, but since I was last covering this tier list, a lot of things have changed. I covered this last on launch. I didn't cover this when Zhu Yuan came out. I didn't cover this when they changed the actual formatting of the tier list to add the anomaly slot. A bunch of stuff has changed. A bunch of characters have moved around. This is way different than the last time I was covering this, and there's also been some recent changes as well, so I wanted to point this all out and present this in the way of like, there's been some big changes to this tier list, so let's go over all of them now, right? So there's going to definitely be some things that I missed since the launch of this game, but the ball's rolled along now to where I'm just going to point out the most important thing. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Qingyi is a tier 0 stun character, and she works on quite literally any team in the entire game. She is so versatile and so strong that, believe it or not, Lycan is still up here at tier 0 for a reason I'll point out in a minute, but on ice teams, like on Ellen ice teams, right? You have Ellen, you have Sukaku as the support, super broken support, by the way, super duper strong. I love using this character. And then Lycan is going to fit there into your stun slot, right? But you could use Qingyi, and she is literally right behind this guy in terms of damage and like overall potential of the whole team. On his own best team, she's like right behind him in performance, right? So I was kind of noticing this myself, and I decided to take a look at the change log here. They were actually considering here, yeah, for these reasons we considered placing her as the sole. They were considering placing her as the sole tier 0 character above Lycan, as he is on ice teams. Basically, she's like basically just as good, which is insane to think about, right? And so you're probably sitting there wondering, well, why on earth is he in tier 0 then still? Why didn't he get moved down? There's a number of reasons for why, right? He's technically still better than her on his best team, which is the ice team. And Ellen teams are incredibly strong. Ellen teams are potentially still the best team in the game right now, right? The two best teams are Ellen teams and Zhu Yuan teams. And the one thing to think about with Zhu Yuan teams is there's the Ether damage type is just a little bit lacking right now for one specific reason. You have Zhu Yuan for Ether, you have Nicole for Ether, right? Which is also why Nicole got bumped up. Well, again, we'll talk about that in a second. But there's nobody else, right? There's no other Ether character right now, right? So that's kind of why I think the Ether team is going to get better. The Zhu Yuan team is going to get better eventually. But that's probably one reason why, you see so many people still running Ellen as their main team right now. Ellen is still super duper busted, love this team, but technically you can slot out Lycan and you can put Qingyi and she will still dominate. You will still dominate with this team anyways, even if you pull this dude and put him on the bench. But you can basically use her quite literally anywhere, and she's so brain dead and broken to use, man. Like, you literally just have to hit a 3-piece combo, then you can literally spam basic attack over and over and over and over and over again until you charge up her bar up to 75%. Right? Then you hold down basic attack. So you basically only hit basic attack this entire time, just different sequences of it. And then she launches a 3-piece follow-up attack combo. It automatically does the whole 3-piece combo as long as you do this right. And then if already charged up your skill, dude, and then you can just bust out a whole skill afterwards. She's insane. And it's so brain dead easy to get the best out of her kit and get the buffs off with her and get all the stuns. Dude, she's insane, right? Think about it too, right? Anby has been so valued for so long because she's a character that everybody can get their hands on, right? And she works on literally any team. She is so busted because of that. She's so versatile. But Qingyi is literally a 5-star upgrade or S rank upgrade, whatever you might want to call it, to Anby. So anywhere you could have been running Anby, Qingyi is just going to be a massive buff to that. And unless you have Anby at like, that's right, it's called Mindscapes. So these are, instead of calling it like E1 or C1 or S1, whatever, you call it M, 1, 2, 3, whatever. They're Mindscapes. And unless you have like several different copies of her to bump up her power level, you know what I mean? She's just not going to be hitting quite as hard or like be as effective as someone like Qingyi will be right out of the box at M0. And so, I don't know, she might be like one of the most valuable characters in the game right now as a result of this. It's still very early, so it's kind of in some way hard to gauge true value. But dude, she works on literally any team, bro. That is so strong that she can just be slotted in anywhere. And just you play her, it's so brain dead to use her. And so she makes an impact literally anywhere she goes. There's an argument to be made that she's like the best character in the game right now. Now, personally, I think that this combat for this game is, if you play well enough, you don't necessarily need to worry about safety and other things like that as well, because you have the parries, you have the dodges, you have all these different things at your disposal. So an argument could be made that, Honkai Star Rail, for example, the best characters in that game are support characters, right? And in many cases, I feel like support characters are typically the best characters in the game, because you can make any decent DPS a super OP character with a strong support. But I think that in games like Zenless Zone Zero, there's an argument to be made that the DPS slot might be the more important slot, because it's all about just crushing your enemies with damage. And if you can dodge and parry and whatnot well enough, there's an argument to be made that you don't have to worry about stunning and doing all these different things, right? That you could actually just DPS down your enemy before they DPS you down. So I kind of don't want to say that she's literally the best in this game. I think it's a little bit early to say something like that, but I think that she's making like an argument for being one of the most valuable characters in the game, very easily one of the most valuable characters in the game. So, and let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other changes we have. We have Nicole here. She's recently gotten bumped up to tier 0.5. The reason why should be obvious. She's literally the only other choice that you have that makes sense for a Zhu Yuan team, right? You use Zhu Yuan, and then you use Nicole. And everybody has at least one Nicole. So you have to go with Zhu Yuan and Nicole. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? And then you have some variety for the other slot that you can use. But because she is literally she's peanut butter and jelly with Zhu Yuan, who's one of the best teams. The two best teams right now are Ellen teams and Zhu Yuan teams. So because of that, she has a ton of value right now. And believe it or not, she has more value right now than Reena. This is another really big, probably somewhat controversial for some of you guys change, that Reena has been bumped down a little bit. She's moved down the tier list to tier 1. And just so you guys are aware, there's only tier 1, tier 2, 0.5, and tier 0. There's no bad character in the game right now. There's some characters that some people might call mid or whatever, but that implies that there's no one below mid right now. So I just wanted to point that out too. But Reena is not as valuable because she's not on one of the best teams. That's just the way it goes, right? Like, she does have a lot of potential, and I think when you get a 5-star premium DPS in the game, I think you'll see Reena come back up a bit, right? I think that's going to happen at some point, because Grace is a 5-star, or Grace is a S rank, whatever you might want to call it, but she's a 1.0 character, and so typically what happens with that is they're not usually as strong as a premium banner character. So, and we see that on the tier list. She's in tier 0.5, right? So I wanted to point that out. I think that's very important that Nicole has value, and I wanted you guys to understand why she has the value right now, and why Reena, despite I'm sure a ton of you guys, I'm sure a lot of you are going to disagree with that, but I have to agree. Like, if you look at, this is based on top level, like end game content. This is end game gameplay that this tier list is based on, and when you look at it from that scope, unfortunately, you have to understand that Reena just doesn't have the same value, because you want to play with two different teams, right? And the two best teams are Zhu Yuan and Ellen. That does not include Reena on the teams, right? She doesn't fit in to those teams. So I think that's important to point out. Lucy, actually a really strong unit. She's kind of stayed around this area. Like, some people have seen her at tier 0.5. I at one point had her at tier 0.5 as well. I think as time has moved on, seeing someone like Nicole bump up in the value of Nicole right now, it makes sense that she's down here, right? I didn't do patch 1.0 part 2's adjustment to the tier list, so I want to kind of discuss some things there. Piper ended up getting brought up. I kind of did not feel she was as good on launch, but like as time has gone on, I will be the first person to admit that I didn't see as much value in her as I did originally, but I see that her value is going to start going up, okay? One reason is as to why is because we got some characters coming out soon, right? Here is Caesar King. She is a physical type defensive unit. She is a 5-star, and she's like the coolest looking design in the entire game right now, in my personal opinion, right? And so she's going to make an impact in the game, and I think that we're going to see physical teams start to like have a real big power spike when someone like her comes into the game. Will she have such an impact that she outperforms, or that the physical team outperforms Ellen and Zhu Yuan? I probably don't think so, but I think you'll start to see certain characters like this start to have more value. Characters like Nekomata start to have more value when you get a really, really good supportive unit for them. Because like right here in the stun slot, you don't see that, right? You don't see. And by the way, the defensive, I don't know if you guys noticed, the defensive like column is completely gone. There's no defensive column anymore, right? So like for example, homeboy over here, Ben, was moved to, he is a defensive unit, but he works better as a supportive role most of the time, right? So they've kind of made a shift to represent how people's playstyles typically work, and so guys like this, despite being a defensive unit, fit better in a supportive role. And so I thought that was important to point out too. That's a big change that happened to the tier list we didn't talk about last time. So I just wanted to point that out. Kaleda ended up getting moved up as well from what we saw her at on launch. She does have a special combo, a faction bonus combo that she can do with, I believe it's what's his face over here, Anton. So something important to point out is that faction combos will start to come into play more once we get more characters for these different factions. For example, Caesar King is going to have, she's going to be Sons of Kaladin, and so is Bernice. I didn't point this out earlier, but Bernice is also going to be coming out as well. She is a fire anomaly character, so I think, you know, you're going to see probably some pretty good stuff coming out at the anomaly slot here. Just because I'm wondering how Anomaly is going to work, because there's not that many Anomaly characters in the game. I'm wondering if Anomaly is just dedicated, like, DPS characters that just so happen to work off of the Anomaly kind of system, or if you're going to potentially start seeing, like, supportive characters that are also Anomaly. I don't know how it's going to go, so I don't want to speculate too much on what Bernice is really going to be bringing to the table, besides her damage type and kind of like her effectiveness beyond the surface level. I don't want to go too deep into, you know, theory crafting that when we're not 100% sure. And so I did also want to point out that although these people are down here in the lowest tier, they're not necessarily bad, right? I think at some point, once we start getting more characters, some of these characters might start to seem bad. But as it stands right now, there's not a whole lot of characters in the game. We're just getting our feet wet. So despite the fact that some of these characters are down here, down below, is not necessarily a terrible thing. Like Anton can perform well on Electro teams. He's got a lot of value there. He can perform well when you pair him with Kaleda. A lot of this tier list is based off of their own personal damage with awareness to the fact that some teams work really well with others and some combos work really well with others as well. For example, Lycan still remains in tier 0, despite him like not having as much value as Qingyi, but because he's technically the best stunner on one of the best teams, he still gets to keep this slot. If you bump him down, is he really as good as Kaleda, or is Kaleda as good as him? No, so that's another reason why he stays up here, is because like you don't want to bump Kaleda down because Ambi's not as good as Kaleda, and you don't really want Kaleda sitting next to Lycan either. So it's a bit of a it's kind of like being between a rock and a hard place. You know what I mean? Like bumping him down kind of goofs things up a little bit, but because he's still on one of the best teams, he gets to stay up here. And I think keeping him around here for like another patch or two is going to be fine. I don't think anyone's going to be too upset about that. But I do want to point out Qingyi's value. It's insane. She's very, very strong. She's making a huge impact right now. She can work on any team. So if you want to like pull her for the versatility of her, that would not be a bad choice. I totally understand wanting to pull for Jane Doe because that bakery that she's working with is insane, okay? I wouldn't mind getting a creamed Anyways, there's a lot of good characters coming, all right? So I understand what you guys might want to save. Okay, Jane Doe's looking pretty good too. But anyways, that's the tier list. Don't forget Soldier 11. A super underrated character. She's actually so good. But anyways, if this was helpful or informative in any way, shape, or form, consider leaving a like and subscribe. Sorry I yapped so much this time, but there was a lot to cover. Anyways, peace out.